But the incident certainly did nothing to alleviate Flying Nun's financial troubles. The Verlaines were forced to contribute their own money to get their records into the record stores.
Flying Nun could only afford to press about 300 copies at a time, and they were sold very, very quickly, and it took them another month to press another 300. So it never reached the charts, and it possibly could have if it had been released all in one hit. And with some of those records, we even paid for the first pressing because, you know, the company didn't have enough money to press the record. I mean, it was fairly infuriating at the time that you'd make a record and it'd be sitting on the shelf for 8, 10, 12 months or some time, and it wouldn't come out because the company didn't have enough money to press it.
We go for a swim in the deep of space. 1,000 colours reflect off your face.
The Chills had gathered the most attention from the release of the Dunedin double EP, and with the demise of the Clean, they were seen as the new saviours of Flying Nun, and that meant the label wanted to put more resources behind them.
The Chills were out there doing the job, and, you know, the resources went there. So when it came time to, we want to do another record, we've got some songs, it's kind of, well, you know, the cupboard's bare.
In some ways, the Chills brought about the downfall of the kind of like the pure Flying Nun ethic, because once our profile kept growing, and it did for, you know, right through the 80s into early 90s, it sort of kept snowballing. And so there were demands on Flying Nun to, I guess, make sure the product was up to the standard to compete with other product. And that meant taking money from them that they didn't really have.
The acclaim given to their songs on the Dunedin double EP, plus the popularity of the Chills as a live act, was tempered by a tragedy that nearly ended the band.
During the recording of the Pink Frost single, our drummer, Martin Bulls, who was a very physically fit person, started showing signs of weariness for the first time. And on the drive back down to Dunedin was basically crashed out in the back of the van the whole time. And 2 weeks later we learned he had leukemia. So he went back up to Masterton to his family and basically died up there quite quickly. He left me this leather jacket and his will. And the song deals with the responsibilities I felt carrying on the project that had become quite important to.
After briefly calling his band A Wrinkle in Time, Phillips eventually resurrected the name The Chills.
We became aware that all the early Chills singles have been reviewed favourably in the British press, that John Peel was playing stuff quite a lot. And it was Doug Hood, I think, predominantly, who really encouraged us to get money together and go.
The Chills were the first Flying Nun band to move to England, where they recorded their first 2 albums. In England, they received consistently good reviews. Radio play and I Love My Leather Jacket reached number 3 on the English independent charts. Despite this, Phillips felt they had problems being accepted.
Being an outsider in England and the States had its benefits, because in some ways you weren't sort of integrated into the class system, but on the other hand, Antipodeans were almost about as low as you get. You know, I think I've always thought that the exciting minds got out of England and came out here, but they seem to really resent us coming back.
You know, I worked in the English music press, and there was still a degree of snobbery. There was still sheep jokes, and there were a lot of really crappy English indie bands that got attention over rather superior Flying Nun bands.
And right near the end, before we left London in the late 80s, we'd sort of finally got respect from the press, and it was good, but I don't think it's worth working for. I just don't think they're worth putting the energy into.
In spite of Phillips' resentment towards the press, he garnered excellent reviews in England for 1990's Submarine Bells.
The songs were caught and done justice to on an album, and still stands up in most people's eyes as the best Chills album. Not to mine, because it didn't catch the fire that we had on stage, but it's still, you know, I think it's the one that's going to survive longest out of all the albums. And I was very disappointed to hear that it's been recently dropped from the Flying Nun catalogue, being probably one of the few gold albums they got. I mean, go figure.
In New Zealand, Heavenly Pop hit reached number 2 on the singles chart, and Submarine Bells became Flying Nun's first number 1 album.
When, I guess, the Chills thing really peaked, as far as New Zealand was concerned, in the late 80s, the Submarine Bells tour, playing town halls, a lot of sort of hoo-ha, getting photos taken with the mayor and this kind of stuff. It felt good that things were, I guess we'd sort of proven a lot of points by then that we could do it. It was great to shove it back in local radio's face that they hadn't done a thing to help us, and here we were, they were having to play our stuff and that kind of thing.
Even though the Chills had moved on to greater things, including signing to American label Slash in 1988, Phillips was still bitter about the treatment meted out to the Chills' first single. Back in 1982, he had taken a copy of Rolling Moon down to the local Dunedin radio station.
The guy sort of put it on a wee turntable for within all 15 seconds, tore the needle off, said, no, we can't play this kind of stuff.
The only constant in the Chills from that first single was the presence of Martin Phillips. It has become an infamous fact that over 40 people have at one time or another been a member of the Chills.
Most people assume there's been a lot of line-up changes in the Chills because they must be sort of dictatorial and a real asshole to work with. I think most people left the band because gradually the reality of life in a group becomes, you know, inescapable. That there just isn't the money for people, to all the people in a group to have a career unless you're doing really well.
Typical of the Chills' constant lineup changes, Soft Bomb, the third album, was recorded in Los Angeles with only one regular Chills member and 3 American musicians. This new version of the Chills never really gelled.
Yeah, the recording of Soft Bomb in Los Angeles is still pretty much the low point of my life. The whole time around it, drugs started creeping to the scene for the first time. It's the first time I tried heroin, just smoking, I guess. Lots of cocaine. I can look back now and see that as the time that things started really turning around and going backwards. Right, when I was starting to deal with that, I got hepatitis C, and that nearly killed me. I got to a point where I realised I was dying, and a few years back, and started putting a lot of things into place that turned it around, and I didn't have to discover Jesus to do it.
The album Soft Bomb and its follow-up Sunburnt sold less than expected, and Martin felt that Flying Nun no longer considered the Chills important to the label.
I was very hurt by it. We needed the support of the label at that time more than ever before, and it just wasn't there. The sort of support got less and less. The phone calls were months and months apart, and at a time I just really needed to know that they still believed in what I was trying to do, but it wasn't there.
This is the way. This is the only way for me.
The life I've had through the Chills, touring around, seeing amazing things overseas. We've played in, I think, 19 countries, seen most of the major cities in the Western world at least, meet lots of wonderful people, got to mingle with my heroes, other, stars who treated me as an equal, and it was just incredible. So, no, I wouldn't change a thing. And as far as I'm concerned, that's just like chapter 1 over, regrouping for chapter 2.